I didn't know the play. I got to know it while we were shooting it, you know, and I thought it was a hoot. I loved it. It seemed that it would be nice if one could have everything sharp, in focus, in other words. And although you can always do that with wide lenses very easily, it's not so easy to do it with long lenses unless you have a lot of light. Now, because it was on a proper stage in Shepperton, it was possible to do this because the stages are very high, so all the heat goes up, and they have extractor fans, and so you can have a very high light level without it being uncomfortable for people. And basically that's what I did. So the whole thing was, you know, in focus. There was no differential focus at all.
Who asked you to bring dirty darts into this house?
Listen, don't be silly.
You been here all night?
Yes, we arrived from Venice.
We've had a smelly scrubber in my house all night. We've had a stinking, pox-ridden slut in my house all night.
Stop it. What are you talking about?
I haven't seen the bitch for 9 years. He comes home without a word. He brings a filthy scrubber off the street. He shacks up in my house.
She's my wife. We're married.
For the night interiors, when you want to do that, you are always governed by what we call a practical. That is the sort of lamps that would have been in the room anyway, because that is your light source. And you know, if you have a candle, you haven't got a very bright light source, so it's absolutely no use trying to sort of do anything like that. In the case of the Homecoming, there was this sort of pater familias had this chair that he always used to sort of occupy.
Where's the money going to come from?
Well, how much is she worth? What are we talking about? 3 figures?
And behind it was a standard lamp. So that would have been the light source for the night, all the night scenes in that room. And so that had to be the brightest thing in the shot. Now, it's happened that at that time they had produced lighting bulbs for film work with quartz envelopes instead of glass. Normally, so that meant that, for instance, a 5 kilowatt lamp, what we call a 5K, the bulb, when a 5K bulb would have been that big, like a football, okay, glass. With quartz, it's much smaller, much hotter, but much smaller. And so I thought about this, and I had a very good gaffer, a man called Bill Chitty. And I said, look, these new 5K bulbs, the standard lamp can be made of metal, and the shade, and my innocence, could be made of asbestos, because nobody thought asbestos was bad for you in those days. And so there's nothing to burn. Therefore, how many of the new quartz 5K bulbs do you think we could get inside this standard lamp? And he said, well, 2. And I said, well, how about 4? You see. And he actually did it. And you put them so that the filament is pointing down. If you had them like that, the light to go side would be no good. So he had them at an angle so that the filament was pointing downward. And he got 4. Now 4 5s is 20. That's a 20 kilowatt standard lamp. Now, a 2-bar electric 5, if it's a really big one, is 20 kilowatts, you see. So it was extremely warm underneath this lamp. Paul Rogers was a dream. Todd put up with it. But that meant that we could shoot exactly as we'd done the day scenes, every single thing was sharp.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not sensitive. I am. I could just be a bit more so, that's all.
The other person that on one occasion sat in this chair was Eli Landau himself when he was on the set, and he was what you would say, a sort of very portly man, and he was sitting in this chair, and Ian Holm said to me, oh, please, I'll give you money, switch the light on. But of course I was very well behaved in those days and didn't.
What's he done? Drop dead?
Yes.
A corpse? A corpse on my floor? Get him out of here! Clear him out of here!
Peter was a very... Some directors tend to sort of... improvised more than Peter. Peter had everything worked out right from the start. Nothing changed from the start. So it was a very sort of choreographed thing, probably because he'd already, after all, it had been on the stage for a long time, and he knew exactly what he wanted and planned it meticulously beforehand, so that nothing was sort of improvised. I've never done a picture where it was more precisely laid out. Working with Peter on The Homecoming, of course, I had years before seen his production, which was the first production of Waiting for Godot, the Samuel Beckett play, which was certainly I hadn't enjoyed very much. It was a very sort of long and obscure sort of thing as far as I was concerned. And I asked him, took the opportunity to ask him, I said, I really didn't enjoy myself in Waiting for Godot. And he said, well, why not? And I said, it's so depressing. I said, he said, well, how did you find it? He said, it's the most optimistic play. He said, how could you say it was depressing? I said, well, Godot never comes. He said, yes, but he might. Benton, he was a very quiet man. I liked him very much. I couldn't say that I got to know him well, but I liked him very much. And Benton never interfered in the slightest degree with the actors or anything. I mean, it's the case that if he had anything, he would quietly say it to Peter, in the same way as a director. I mean, if an actor is playing a scene, if after take one, perhaps the director will want him to change something. Well, he won't tell him to change it there. He'll go quietly up to him and say quietly, so nobody else knows. So it's something between. It would be something between Harold and Peter, in the same way that if Peter wanted an actor to change something, he would say it quietly to the actor. The rest of us wouldn't know about it.
Do you remember McGregor, Teddy?
Mac? Of course I do.
What did you think of him? Did you take to him?
Although most of the picture was shot on the stage at Shepperton, we did have a couple of exteriors, I think, of the house. And I think the house was in the East End, some in Islington or somewhere like that. And so naturally you go along and have a look at the place. And we did this before we started shooting. And we had a night exterior when Michael Jaston and Vivian Merchant arrive at the house. And we looked at this street, and as I said, you always go with the practicals, the lamps that are there. And there were these street lights, and I had this wonderful gaffer, and I said, what sort of street lamps are those? Are they the sort of orange jobs or, the blue ones? And he had a look, and he said, oh, they're the orange. You see. And unfortunately, for the only time I've known it, he got it wrong. So he then turned up to do the night stuff. And I had already, when we went to do this night exterior, we had already shot for a week on the stage in Shepperton on a night scene. So I'd had orange light coming through from outside the windows. And we get out to this location to do this night scene, and of course, on come the street lights, and they're blue as blue as you can get. So we shot the night stuff. When we got back into the stage, and this actually, like many things, this disaster had a good effect in as much as that it meant that in all the other scenes where we had street light from the streets at night coming through the windows, it was a much more subdued orange than I had made it, which was much better. And so, in a sense, I probably reaped the benefit of it, because the majority of the film, the amount of orange light coming from outside is much more subtle, if you like. So what you will get at the end of the film, you'll suddenly get vivid orange coming from outside for no reason at all, which we shot the first week. But nobody ever notices those things.
But Ruth, I should tell you that you'll have to pull your weight a little if you stay, financially. My father isn't very well off.
I had, at this time, done several pictures with Tony Richardson, who was going to direct the Albies play, A Delicate Balance, in the same series. And because I knew Tony very well, he knew that I had a sort of relaxed approach to my work, and asked for me to do The Delicate Balance, and was told by the production that that wasn't possible because Tony's rehearsals were taking place at the same time that we were shooting The Homecoming. So I wouldn't be able to attend Tony's rehearsals. And when they told him this, Tony shrieked with laughter and said, he won't even read the script, let alone come to rehearsals. So I was able to do both.
Where do you think you're going?
You go straight to hell.
Now, what's going on here?
Will you shut her up?
Well, there you are, Julia. Your father can safely leave the room now, I think. Hello, my darling. Your mother has arrived. Talk to him. Your daughter is in need of consolation or a great cuffing around the ears. I don't know which to recommend.
Have Harry and Edna?
No, they have not.
Whereas The Homecoming was on a proper film stage at Shepperton Studios, Delicate Balance was all filmed in a house at Crystal Palace, right on top of the hill, right next to sound problem really, but no, right next to the BBC's television station transmitter, which meant for the sound crew that in those days you had a thing called a Fisher boom, which you could extend the boom out, and if they did this, it meant that the boom became an aerial, and they pick up Dad's Army or something. That was one of the problems. The location. It was a house which film companies will usually do. They will buy an empty house, shoot their film, and then put the house back on the market. So basically, their set just hadn't cost them much. It was an empty house, and for some reason, the bath had been disconnected or something. So you had this extraordinary thing. One sort of Monday morning, the first day that we were there, very early, the neighbouring house had a ring at the bell and opened the door, and there is Catherine Hepburn standing on the doorstep saying would they mind if she had a cold bath in their house, because it was her habit to have a cold bath every morning, which I think was a bit of a surprise for them. She was the nicest kind of busybody. She knew everything that was going on the set, but was so positive. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. She said, "You're a charming young man," which that is the last time anybody ever said that to me. She said, "You're a charming young man, but you won't be able to do anything about my neck." And I suddenly realised it was quite a shock that she was... actors, by and large, I mean, there's nothing wrong in an actor being worrying about how they look, because that's their job, But she was concerned about that she had a bit of a scrawny neck, and which, of course, is why, if you remember, in all her films, she always wore very high-necked costumes. Nothing else to worry about with her, and she then told me the wonderful story about Jack Cardiff. She said, when we were doing African Queen, Cardiff said to me, the only thing that would do your neck any good would be a surgeon, you see. And I said, well, I can't promise you a lot, but I won't be as rude as that, you see. And at which point, Tony had overheard the tail end of this conversation and walked over and said to Kate, he said, "You're so vain, you actors, worrying about your looks when it's your talent that's important, you see." And she said, "But Tony is very vulnerable being an actor." And I already adored her, and I thought I'd say something very gallant, so I said, "Oh, only if you're a bad actor." And she said, "That's worse than Jack Cardiff."
You are copping out,
No,
as they
indeed.
say. Yes, you are.
Don't you yell at me.
You're copping out.
We follow. We let our men decide the moral issues.
Never. You've never done that in your life.
Always, my darling. Whatever you decide, I'll make it work. I'll run it for you. So you'll never know there's been a change in anything.
No.
So, let me know.
What I'm interested in is actually what the film looks like on the screen in the way it's lit. So I concern myself with what quality of lens, not necessarily the focal length of lens for a particular shot. I will know who makes the lenses and the film that's in the camera, which is what the audience actually sees, and the way the film is lit. But the actual day-to-day, shot-to-shot movement of deciding we'll do this on a crane or we'll do this on a track or we'll have a 75mm lens for this or I leave that really to my camera operator and the film's director. And they work it out between, because they're the people that are actually doing it anyway.
When Teddy died, we could have had another son. We could have tried. But no, those months, or was it a year?
No more of this.
I think it was a year when you spilled yourself on my belly, sir. Please, please, Tobias. But no, you wouldn't even say it out. I don't want another child, another loss. Please, please, Tobias. And guiding you, trying to hold you in.
Agnes, please.
Don't leave me then like that. Not again, Tobias, please. I can take care of it. We won't have another child, but please, don't leave me like that.
On any film, sets suggest how you should light them. I mean, unless it's a musical, in which case you can do anything that comes into your head. Really, one should try and make the thing look as real and as natural as possible. And you do that by lighting it in the same way that it would normally be lit. And on location, that's exactly it. I mean, the day scenes, you try and make it look as though the light's coming from the windows, and the night scenes, you try and make it look as though it's coming from what we call the practicals. Well, without going to the extent that I did in The Homecoming, of course. I had an idea for lighting the dining room scene, which was, in fact, very stupid. I rigged this thing up and then realised it was an overhead light over the dining room table. And I realised that this was the instant that it came on, I knew that it was a bad idea.
That was, without question, the ugliest dinner I've ever sat through.
And it screwed the sound completely.
Now,
It meant that it was impossible not to have a mic shadow. And Tony, who was mischievous to a degree, and very quick, of course, spotted this at once and insisted on doing it. And I said, well, no, Tony, it's a terrible idea, you know. I like it. For once you've been clever, he said. And the reason was twofold. It embarrassed me and it screwed the sound. Tony was wicked. He was certainly wonderful with actors, which is, after all, the director's principal job, you know. But he was also wonderful with the crew. And it was my good fortune to sort of have the chance of working in feature films at exactly the time when there were people like Peter Brook and Tony and Richard Lester who were freeing us all from what had become rather a conventional approach to the way in which films were made. And I'd started in documentaries where you didn't have that kind of conventionality, but I'd also had a good upbringing and knew the rules. And if you're going to sort of disregard rules or break them, as they say, it's always a good thing to know them first and understand them. So I was able to do things which, partly because of my background and partly because of the people I was working with, that feature cameramen up to that time would probably not have been encouraged, to say the very least, and probably not particularly wanted to do. And the thing about Tony, I mean, Tony would much rather that you took a sensible risk in order to do something interesting than if you played safe. Playing safe was not the way to Tony's heart.
I had a glimmer of it last night, thought I knew.
That which we see in the bottom of the glass is most often dregs.
Really, truly so.
He originally cast Kim Stanley as Claire, the alcoholic sister. And Kim, of course, was a real alcoholic. And Catherine Hepburn had spent her life looking after a real Spencer Tracy, who was also an alcoholic and knew all the signs and the way things were going. And after a couple of rehearsals, put her foot down and said, "Well, you'll never finish the picture, with this." And so she was replaced by a Canadian actress, Kate Reid. Yes, but Tony did say to me afterwards that Kim Stanley was a wonderful actress who had taught him a lot about the part in the 2 days that they'd rehearsed together.
And I heard myself say in my little girl voice, there were a lot of different me's by then, I am a alcoholic. My name is Claire, and I am a alcoholic. You try it.
My name is Claire, and I am an alcoholic.
A alcoholic.
A alcoholic.
Catherine Hepburn and Tony were extremely funny between them. Somebody on one occasion said that, he said it to Kate, he said, Tony could be your son, you see. And she said, finally, it's some compensation for being childless.
I believe that dinner is served.
Yes.
If any of you have the stomach for it.
A nice thing about Kate was that I can remember she had her own room in the house, and she used to come onto the set where we were shooting and say, look, said, I'm fed up sitting on my own. She said, do you mind if I just come and, in a scene where she wasn't in a scene, she would say, do you mind if I just come in, stay here, And she'd go and sit on the stairs somewhere and chat to the electricians. And she was a darling.
What I find most astonishing, I think, is the wonder of daylight, of the sun. All the centuries, millenniums, all the history. I wonder if that's why we sleep at night, because the darkness still frightens us. They say we sleep to let the demons out, to let the mind go raving mad, our dreams and nightmares, all our logic gone around, the dark side of our reason. And when the daylight comes again, comes order with it.
I think it was a lovely idea. No, it's sad in the sense that they didn't carry on and do more of them. It always was a joy to work anyway.